Hello everyone, Bea Grob here. My channel is about mixed media and more. Join me for art journaling, paintings, handmade books or journals and everything else I come up with. Hi folks, today I'm here with another collaboration. Earlier this year, while at Creativation 2018, a few of us teamed up and decided to do a collaboration for a mail art postcard exchange. The theme is the change of the seasons. And as we live in different climate regions, we're gonna center it around the astronomical start of a new season. So here is the first series for spring. There were no other specification than it has to be a postcard size. As you see, I did start with some gesso, a stencil and a mixed media paper. I did prepare two papers the same way. There is a reason for that, which you're gonna see later. The goal here wasn't absolute perfection, just wanted to add some texture with gesso. As a next step, I wanted to use some inks. I will have all the supplies listed over at my blog. And just so you know, I did speed up the video 2.5 times and did edit out boring parts. First, I have sprayed some water and started dropping various greens and yellows to one of the papers. Next, I was moving the paper around and let the color run wherever it wanted. I also added more water before I grabbed the second paper and pick up color. There is still more color than what I need on the paper, so I grab some napkin leftovers to pick up some of it. I keep all these cleanup napkin parts and use it in other projects. For the next layer, I do some splatters in all the colors I have used so far. But I also added some muted pink color. Now that the paper is dry again, I can cut it to the postcard size. One of the reasons I have made rather large papers, I'm now able to pick the really nice parts. As a next step, I wanted to add some really dimensional texture. I did use tissue paper, which I crumpled up and glued it down with Liquitex matte. Before I went on to the next step here, I had to let it dry really good. I wanted to add some sewing to the borders. Not a good idea when the paper is still wet. And just a side note here. When I know I'm gonna use the sewing machine, I rather use matte medium to adhere things. Glue or gloss medium seems to be more difficult. In the art school decades ago, we had a class experimental stitching where we did a lot of our own substrates and combined hand and machine sewing in our exercises. To stitch the two lines around the borders, I did use a multicolored thread. I don't know how long I have this thread, so don't ask me what brand it is. The first line I did somewhat straight, and the second line I made a sort of a crisscross line over the first one. Nearly done, but the tissue paper needs some metallic paint from Viva Decor and then also some metallic wax from Pentart. I do apply the paint and then wipe off some with a wet towel, just to enhance the texture. I did use a magenta and a gold metallic wax and then use a dry towel to buff it. Here we have the backgrounds that have been sent to me. And by the way, don't forget to check the other videos. There will be a list in the description down below. I have really a lot of napkins with butterflies, birds and flowers from my mom, so I decided to work with some from my stockpile. The background from Lena has a vintage feel for me, and so does this napkin. Whenever I use a napkin or a tissue paper, I make sure that the visible edges are rather teared. I think they just blend in better. As a focal point, I wanted to use this butterfly from another napkin, but this time I want it dimensional, so I first glue it onto a scrap piece of mixed media paper. When everything was dry, I did fussy cut the butterfly and then did color the edges with a Pitt pen. On another piece of mixed media paper, I did scribble with the same yellow Pitt pen I have used before on the butterfly. Next, I'm gonna stamp with StazOn ink the word spring. I did use 2 different fonts to jazz up the thing a bit. I will have a close-up photo of all 3 postcards at the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe and share. I have usually 2 videos per week, sometimes 3. And as usual, if there are any questions, leave them in the comments. Somehow the butterfly and the quote wasn't quite tied into the rest of the card, so I had to bring in more acrylic paint. The good thing with mixed media, you can add layers until it works. So far the background colors were rather muted colors, but just this touch of another bright color onto the background made it for me. As I said before, I wanted the butterfly to be dimensional, so I did use a ball stylus to form it a bit. I usually have one with a larger ball, but it is broken and I'm waiting for the new one. Hopefully it is here pretty soon. It is a bright to paint, but too close to the butterfly, so onto some bright green now. Okay, while we are at, what about some metallic teal? That's the way I roll, layers after layers, more is more. To glue down, I used some silicone 3D glue. Using foam dots would have worked too. For the edges I use a Posca pen. They are made of acrylic paints and work on a lot of surfaces. For Shell's card I use a bird, again from a napkin. But this time I'm gonna use it directly on the card, so I tear the edges to have it blend in better. When you have a rather busy and somewhat darker background, the focal point can get lost as the napkin is translucent. So I check where the bird roughly gonna be and then I add some gesso to the background. Unfortunately I lost some of the footage for this card, but basically I glued the napkin and then went in with some stamping with StazOn and added some bits of a musical sheet. This background is from Linda. I'm gonna use it with the typical spring flowers, some tulips in pink. The same napkin has also some text, so I make a collage with parts of the napkin, but I also add again just the flower heads onto some mixed media paper to make them dimensional again. I then outline everything in a rather sketchy style with a black permanent marker. Now enjoy the rest of the process. I will step in when there is something to say. In the meantime, I leave you with some music. These tulips needed a bit more of opacity against the background. The Jane Davenport markers are perfect to color in them. To let the flowers pop even more, I added some gesso, just dabbing with my fingers. To stamp clearly on a textured surface is really difficult, but there is a solution. I do stamp on some tissue paper and then glue the tissue paper on. The tissue paper itself gets so transparent that you really have to look very close to see it. So again, I'm using StazOn ink and the stamp set, which has letters in different fonts. Here I'm taking off a bit more of the tissue paper, so it doesn't overlap onto the flowers, just to be on the safe side. So that's it for today. We have planned to have a collab for every seasonal change, so stay tuned.